Hey Charles, this is John Watts. I saw your comment and I had just walked in the office coming back from teaching a group of lawyers about the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and saw your comment and thought it might be easier to just do a video and hopefully this will be helpful to you. So the concept is a debt collector calls you or writes to you, and then within that so-called validation period, which is normally 30 days after they send you the first letter, you go to them and say, hey, I dispute this debt. I do not agree I owe it. And then they don't do anything. They do not validate the debt. And instead, they just sell it or transfer it to another collector. And then that collector writes you and calls you. And so your question was, once you do that the first time and they do not validate the debt, isn't that bad paper, bad debt? And then they should not be allowed to then sell that or transfer that to somebody else. And that makes a lot of sense. Here's the problem with it. Under the law, when you request that validation, they really have two options. Number one, they can choose to validate the debt. And if they do that, assuming they do it properly, then they're allowed to continue to collect. But their second option is to just stop collecting and do nothing. And then at that point, they can sell it or transfer it. It's one reason why I'm not a big fan of the so-called cease and desist letter, because you send that letter to a collector and they stop collecting, but then they transfer it to somebody else. That cease and desist letter does not go with it. So that new collector is not bound by the cease and desist letter. Same thing with this validation. So you can prevent a debt collector from collecting on the debt because they don't choose to validate it, but then they send it to a new one and you have to start the process all over. Now, the exception would be if the debt collector truly knows that the debt is uncollectible. In other words, they have no right to collect it. So, I'll give you an example. Maybe we've been sued on a debt and we win it, and then that debt collector sells it to somebody else. Well, now they have sold bad debt. So, exactly what you're talking about. And when that happens and that new collector starts collecting, we sue both of them. We sue the one that sold it because they knew it was bad. And we sue the new guy because we say, well, you knew it was bad also. Now, his defense may be to point the finger back at the first guy and say, he told me it was valid debt and it really was terrible debt. Okay, well, maybe the second guy gets out, but the first guy's going to get hammered with that. So just keep that in mind. You get a debt removed from the credit report, you send a validation request, and then they transfer it to somebody else. That in and of itself, without more, is not a violation of the law. But it's something you need to look at and definitely keep an eye on. And you asked about if I knew lawyers in Houston. I don't specifically, but I'll put in the comments a link to a website where you can kind of start your search there. So hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any other questions and appreciate your comment. Thanks. Bye-bye.